Hello everyone, I'm Atul Singh. Hope you are doing all good today. Welcome to Novel Vistas Learning Carnival, and our blockchain webinar topic for today is blockchain for the real world. As blockchain matures beyond the hype, a number of clear and compelling use cases have emerged, which indirectly help us to tell what's real and what's just a hype. Blockchain's age over older technology stems from three things. One, transparency. Two, trust. Third, security. In this webinar, we will be exploring how these three factors play out in a range of industries, including pharmaceutical, green energy, banking, and real estate. This real-world webinar cuts through the fluff to explore what actually being done with blockchain right now, today by innovative businesses all over the world. It's everything you need to know to keep current as a professional steering your own business operations into the current decade. Today's presenter for our webinar is Ms. Yael Tamar. She is the CMO and partner with SolidBlock, the first company to market with the successful tokenization of commercial property in 2018. Yael is a blockchain strategist, industry speaker, advisor, and a mentor. She has over a decade of experience as a marketing executive within the fintech, finance, telecom, and energy industries, as well as a long track record as an entrepreneur. Today's webinar, it will be giving you further insights about blockchain and its real-world effectiveness. Over to Ms. Yael, she will be guiding you further. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you so much for the introduction. Without further ado, I would love to start the webinar. So let me see. Share my screen. Do you see my screen? You don't see my screen, right? How can I share my screen? Okay, you can see me. Now I'd like to share my screen. I'm trying to show. Okay. I had to change myself to become a presenter. Okay, guys, so my screen is showing, right? Okay. Can somebody indicate to me if they can see my screen? Okay, people can see me. Okay, great. So I'm just gonna assume that everybody can see it. Okay, guys, so let's get started. I'd like to talk to you today about, in general, what blockchain is. I'd like to start with just the basics, although I'm assuming that some of you probably know most of the things that we're gonna talk about. So the reason why we love blockchain so much, and the reason why it has received so much hype in the recent year, was that you know, we heard on the news, all over the media, that blockchain is the future, right? Blockchain is the new internet, and so on. So it went so far as to say that in just 7 years from now, 10% of all GDP will be on decentralized ledger or blockchain. So this was a quote from the World Economic Forum. So what really is blockchain? Okay, so in general, it's very, very simple. Blockchain was the first infrastructure that was built out of a need to transfer money, money in a digital form without a central agency facilitating the transfer. So if I were to send you guys 10 rupees, you know, if I wanted to give you 10 rupees, I could take it out of my pocket, and give it to you directly, right? If I was standing next to you. Now, if I'm in another town, then I could open up my phone and send it to you on PayPal, or maybe do a bank transfer. But if I did PayPal or a bank transfer, I would be using a central authority, which will verify that my balance will be reduced by 10 rupees and your balance will be increased by 10 rupees. So there's always this central agency verifying this. Now, how do we create a technology that does not require the central agency to verify? So it would be as easy as me pulling 10 rupees out of my pocket and giving it to you, right? How can we do this digitally? So there was a lot of digital money throughout the history and a lot of trials to do this, to facilitate this type of ecosystem. But until blockchain, it was virtually impossible or not secure enough, not simple enough. So what does blockchain really do? So we have a decentralized network of devices or computers or cloud space all over the world, and once a transaction happens, this network verifies the transaction and also makes sure that my balance is reduced and your balance is increased. So there is a mechanism that you guys can read about, all kinds of consensus mechanisms available, which we're not going to discuss today. But the virtue of me sending you money or information is facilitated via a blockchain program called smart contract. Right? So in some cases, smart contract is also an agreement that carries other information, not only that say the amount, the ID of the receiver, the ID of the giver, and sometimes there's other information also involved in the smart contract. So this is an immutable process. Nobody can change once I send over that transaction. That transaction cannot be changed by anybody in the network. And because of course consensus again from all of the network is needed for any update. So that basically is blockchain. Now, what is a token? Because I'm sure you've heard tokens, right? So a token is a representation of asset or utility on top of a blockchain. So this could be just me sending you, sending you funds. This could mean me sending you information. This could be me selling you a part of my apartment, or this could be me selling you a part of my painting. And we'll get into this kind of fractional selling in a bit. This process, blockchain has been used for many things, but initially it was used for fundraising. From about year 2013, companies realized that, Bitcoin by then has kind of gained popularity. So companies realized that they could raise funds via selling the future services or future products to their customers, right? So they employed blockchain to do that, and that's how the ICO, initial coin offering, industry was born. Now the ICO industry boomed in the years 2017 and 2018, and basically tokens, blockchain-based tokens, were used for crowdfunding, and they represented rights such as use of service in the future or access to the platform. And later on, it migrated to an STO, and we'll get a little bit into the security token and versus utility token, what the differences are. But the security token offering usually involved tokens that represent rights to dividends. Now, so this is how initially blockchain was used with ICOs and fundraising. However, quickly the world realized that there was a lot more utility to blockchain than just fundraising for companies' activity. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this type of a graph, but this is basically how most technologies are getting adopted in the market. So I would say around 2012 around 2012, 2013, we saw blockchain spiking. We had a crazy amount of investment pouring into this industry. And then, along with Bitcoin, of course, because many people had accumulated enormous wealth through Bitcoin, and now they were investing and they were looking for easier way to invest. So that spurred a lot of investment in blockchain startups. and in blockchain companies, and also blockchain started gaining attention from corporations. So then kind of in 2017, kind of the interest started to go down a little bit, and maybe 2018 we may have entered this trough of disillusionment where people weren't sure if blockchain is interesting, if it's useful, and I think we're kind of out of that trough by now. In 2019, 2020, when we start realizing that the whole fall of the market and the scamming and this was in a way a growth pain for this technology, where a lot of useless solutions were eliminated, and now again there will be kind of a slow growth of productivity, right, for the blockchain industry to go in. So, I mentioned the ICO industry, initial coin offerings, where we saw that 90% of them companies were sort of a scam, and the rest weren't sure what they were doing. The reason why the whole industry was so popular was because it was easy to access these projects. So there's something that we can actually learn about this market. So there were many projects that people were financing, and they were easy to find, easy to put money in. So this was actually a really positive thing. So you could use Bitcoin and Ether that you accumulated in the investment to invest. They accumulated throughout the last few years when people trading crypto. You could use it to invest in companies. You could also sell. So this was liquidity. This was a great value proposition. There were communities, huge communities rallying for projects, like in any crowdfunding. So that was also very, very useful. And also, it was a regulatory space in which the regulators, many countries, didn't know what to do. They couldn't necessarily prohibit the use of tokens, although some countries like China did. But some countries like the U.S. and in Europe, they were just kind of looking into it and not taking action. So that's why a lot of these projects weren't necessarily legit and got away with taking the money from people and not building anything. So the reason why they were able to do that is that the utility token isn't tied to any particular asset that the company owns. It's kind of creating this new market. So there are millions of dollars raised within minutes or hours for these companies. So now what we're seeing is that security tokens are emerging, and security tokens are actually backed by tangible assets or profits or revenue. You have to go through the full regulation within security regulation within the jurisdiction where you raise money, and you know that what you're raising money for is a security, and people are investing in it because they look for profits. Right. So in terms of the crypto space, we're looking at right now at security tokens. We're looking at a lot of financial institutions that are adopting both blockchain and crypto. If 5 years before, only about 70% of banks and S&P 500 companies were dealing with blockchain. I think by now about 100%, every single major company is using blockchain for a part of its technology. So it could be either in financial transfers, it could be in accounting, it could be in ID management. So most big institutions are using blockchain by now. Financial services, of course, payments, most of the world right now, or not most of the world, about 2 billion people, a quarter of the world are unbanked individuals who have access now. A lot of them have access now to banking-like services through the blockchain-enabled apps. You see a lot of financial instruments being traded in the market and utilizing blockchain and crypto and so on, right? So I want to quickly go through the role of the government in all of this, because I think it's really crucial for development of this industry. First of all, a lot of governments are supporting blockchain innovation by giving grants, and a lot of the governments are putting out regulators that are looking into both crypto and blockchain and creating rules for enabling primary and secondary markets for different products, looking into tax schemes and helping facilitate ecosystem creation. So we're talking about blockchain in the in industries today, and I want to go through a few. I want to go through a few. Okay, I want to go through a few industries here and kind of sample them all. Let me look at the poll that you guys did and see. All right, so I asked why you're interested in blockchain. So 25% said they're interested in how it could help them in my current career. The majority said, no, sorry, in my current business. The majority said it will help me advance in my career. A few said that they heard about Bitcoin. So, all right, very interesting. So I'm wondering what kind of careers you guys are in, feel free to maybe write me in the questions anything specific related to specific industry. Let me know if you have any questions along the way. Also, I'll be looking through questions here. Does anybody have any questions so far with regards to just a general blockchain overview? All right, so I'm gonna go through this, the use cases, and thank you guys for answering the poll. All right, so blockchain and supply chain. Now, this is a very interesting industry because, of course, it's global. It incorporates payments. It has about 22, statistically, about 22 points of intersection for each product going from, let's say, China to the US through delivery. The product goes through 22 different stages. So you can imagine the amount of work that has to be done with connecting the dots in this industry. And finally, there's always a threat of some sort of contamination or loss along the way, and so on. So supply chain industry is pretty much perfect fit for blockchain innovation. So let me talk about a few very specific problems and solutions that blockchain provides. So number one is provenance. So there've been quite a few use cases that allow tracking products from the inception to either the shelf or to a store. So one of the early examples was diamonds, and companies and consumers were looking into eliminating blood diamonds and giving certificates to ethical diamonds. So this was done with blockchain, and in blockchain you can see all of the points of intersection and stops that the diamonds made from the actual quarry where diamonds were mined, from the actual mine to the shop. So you can do this with blockchain. You can see this publicly, and you can also ensure that nobody tampers with information. So data visibility is another one. There are a lot of companies that are looking into combining the knowledge of the ecosystem, and the best example of that would be a project by Walmart. Let me see if I have an example. Yeah, here. So you have a project. It's actually an IBM project initiated with Walmart, which this was a pilot for traceability of mangoes, but they're planning to do this for the majority of projects. And a lot of the companies that are kind of competitors between each other joined in these ecosystems. And the idea is to help identify help pinpoint any problems within the food supply chain. So if you have some contamination along the way, usually what happens is all of the products are basically taken off the shelves, and it's a huge cost for the supplier, and also it's a huge liability as well, because in the United States alone, there are more than 1 million deaths each year from food poisoning, and about 1 in 10 people end up in the hospital or end up with some sort of a consequence from food poisoning every year, right? So we keep hearing about these things, listeria and salmonella and so on and so forth. So what they wanted to do with this project is basically label every single product so that if there is a contamination, then they will be able to pinpoint the source of contamination and then quickly understand where the rest of the products that have come in contact with the source. Now, I think it's more relevant than ever with the threat of coronavirus, where a lot of packages, let's say even that travel from China, and you can track them and see what happens. And see how you can prevent any sort of contamination. So other examples in blockchain industry improve inventory management and also paperwork. So when you send one product to another country, you send a product to another country, like I said, it goes through 22 different stops on average. So, and in each stop, there has to be a document that's printed out called the bill of lading, and it literally is printed out and signed, in many cases manual and faxed to the new destination. So there's many companies that try to innovate this process, right? So that's supply chain. And you can see basically if you guys are working in supply chain, and if you have a company, let's say a shipping, I know that a lot of people from India here, and you have a lot of shipping businesses, definitely look into solutions. IBM has several solutions, and even Microsoft has solutions now for blockchain-based management. And also there's, of course, many startups doing this and lowering a lot of costs. So banking industry, of course, probably benefits the most from blockchain so far if we're looking into the traditional industries. So banking industry is first and foremost, the banks realized the power of blockchain, and they all started developing solutions, and first of all, for cross-bank transactions. As you may know, when you send money from one country to the other, you sometimes have to wait for 10 or even 14 days to get the money. Whereas with even PayPal and Bitcoin, it's instantaneous. So the banks are now working on their own blockchain systems and entering consortia. They're using private blockchains, most likely, that they develop in-house. So, but they are definitely using blockchain. So if you are working at a bank, then most likely your, especially a larger bank, is using blockchain to some extent. And you could use blockchain for various things along the supply chain of the money transfers, and also lending. There are many applications in lending for both P2P and institutional lending that use blockchain. And later on, I will transfer. You probably can see the link to the presentation, which will be added. And you can look at different examples of using blockchain in the banking industry. And you can see that it's been used for remittance payments and cross-border transactions. R3Court is one of the bigger players, blockchain players for institutions, geared towards institutionals. So NASDAQ has been using it for security. So blockchain, of course, has a big application for security because it creates immutable records. So trading platforms is a great example because the trading platforms literally were one of the only use cases of blockchain that made money from 2018 to now. Trading platforms and exchanges. Lending, syndicated lending, so look into that, and accounting. There are many accounting applications. Hedge funds have been using blockchain. Some of them have been tokenizing their shares, and peer-to-peer transfers as well, of course. So look into BitPay, look into 10x. These have been widely used for payments, right? To allow merchants to accept crypto. So blockchain to real estate is kind of the industry where I work. So I am the CMO and partner at Solid Block, and our goal is to democratize the real estate industry, make it accessible globally, and enable fundraising for great real estate projects, and also enable investors to get liquid investments, right? So we believe that real estate needs to be like any other financial product that you can trade, that you can freely buy or sell, and the market determines the price by supply and demand. So in real estate specifically, there are many problems that the blockchain is solving. So one of them is, of course, investment, but then there's others, such as transactions, right? So when you go to buy an apartment or a house, in most countries, it takes a really long time to do the transaction. It's cumbersome, and you have to go through many processes and hoops. And apparently, you know, countries like Georgia have implemented a blockchain mechanism which enables you to do this whole transaction in less than 4 hours, right? So they guarantee you do this in less than 4 hours. How do they do that? Well, first of all, they put all of their titles, real estate, you know, property titles on blockchain, and then they created a process of verification. You know, when you do a transaction, of certain offices that need to get notified of this transaction, and then they verify it. So it's very efficient. If you guys are working in the government, there are many examples of successful technologies that facilitate governance. So this is an interesting project for titling. So there's, of course, other problems like expensive intermediaries, like brokers, and there's some applications that allow like a peer-to-peer marketing and transfer. Of course, fraud is a big one, and I've seen some issues, some software that verifies due diligence for information. So, and of course, also blockchain application that allow access to data that you gather from the real estate market. So a little bit about the tokenization, where you know, tokenization is one of the biggest trends of 2019, 2020. And the reason why is because tokenization enables people to acquire assets fractionally, so you don't have to acquire a whole asset. The assets remain liquid, meaning you can sell them and you can trade them, and you don't have to commit to an asset because you have this liquidity. So tokenization really takes the rights to an asset. You know, basically you're buying rights to revenue or dividend, right? So you convert it to digital tokens through blockchain, and then you can list these tokens on exchanges, or you can trade them over the counter, and so on. So in general, digital securities, whether they're property-based or, you know, it could be a piece of art, could be commodities, right? It could be maybe oil that you extracted from a well. They provide an efficient fundraising process. Compliance, why do they provide regulatory compliance? Is because every single issuance of a digital security involves securitization. Securitization is a process that the process of issuing a security within a certain jurisdiction, which means that you have to comply with the local rules and regulations. You have to write a financial document, like a mini prospectus or a full prospectus in some countries, and you issue a security. You issue a security which is, you know, blockchain based, so you can also trade it. You can program some incentives in this process, you know, for purchasing, for holding, and give higher interest to people who hold the product for longer. You disperse automatic dividends or interest, and like I said, they're easily transferable. And this is an example of a project that Solid Block has done last year in Aspen, Colorado, where we tokenized a ski resort. It's a Marriott brand called St. Regis, and raised $18 million for that property. So Indiegogo was also a partner on this project. just very quickly, because I think this is very important for people who are going into this industry, the process of tokenization involves, of course, due diligence of the asset. The most important thing is the value of the asset that is not too high and really is more or less accurate, because in the secondary market, it will not trade if the value would be too high in the primary stage. So after the legal structuring, we create the token and do the token offering and distribute it in the end. So that's basically the tokenization process. If you guys are interested about more information on this, then you can go to our website, solidblock.co, or talk to me. So IoT is also very big in most, all over the world, in most industries out there. And the most interesting applications I think are in manufacturing and in also in supply chain. You use sensors to move goods across the supply chain, and things like smart home, things like identity, right? We have even entrance and exit from a building, right? You use sensors nowadays for everything. So blockchain is very complementary with IoT. And number one is because of identity protection, like blockchain is used for that. Number two is for data collection and data analysis, so a much more efficient way to do that. You can combine IoT and AI, using blockchain infrastructure. So I'd like you guys to look into different applications which either secure IoT data or anonymize IoT data with blockchain, or use blockchain to communicate between the different parts of the IoT system. IoT, by the way, is Internet of Things. For those who are not familiar, Internet of Things is basically an industry that talks about objects, or that communicate with each other using sensors. So it's basically sensor ecosystems, right? So I've seen a few applications from measuring river contamination to water waste and sustainability, energy trading, so the pharmacy and so on. Like most of these are cross between blockchain, IoT, and another industry, right? So IoT is kind of a supplementary industry, really. So insurance is also another use case for both IoT and blockchain. It's really interesting. There are many applications in insurance technology. Starting from fraud, which is one of the biggest problem with insurance, and health insurance, of course, and so on and so forth. So IoT helps insurance to automate data collection, right? So you guys look into that. Clean tech is a great industry for blockchain, and the biggest one, of course, is the trade of renewable energy, right? So where blockchain is a great application for enabling ecosystems to trade without the centralized body. So one of the biggest problems in blockchain, in clean tech, is lack of digitalization of the energy system. You usually have like one big company that is not monopolizing, but they're not transparent usually with their energy prices or use, and they usually are responsible for supplying energy to some sort of a jurisdiction or entity, country, and so on. So when you integrate, let's say, a solar panel on your roof, like what do you do when you have excess energy? Well, you want to sell it to other people. How do you do that? Well, if you involve the big player, then most likely you're not going to make so much profit, right? Because they control the prices, they control everything. So we need to have local networks that enable us to do so. So blockchain is used to enable a peer-to-peer energy trading model. And also you can use cryptocurrencies as utility tokens to pay for tradable energy, right? So you can use in your currency to avoid, costly payment software or transaction charges, right? So you only incur the transaction charge if you want to withdraw the funds that you have. So look into Energy is a great company that's doing that's facilitating EV charging payments. You have Power Ledger in Australia, and Richard Branson invested in that one. This is a peer-to-peer energy trading platform, right, mainly for solar energy, and also look at different marketplaces, right? So there are many marketplaces. So what we're seeing with blockchain, it really is creating new marketplaces and new industries all around specific technology applications, right? So we see a lot of that. So I think that's pretty much it for just. I just wanted to give you guys an overview of top 5 industries. If you guys want me to talk about any specific industry that I haven't touched and I haven't covered, so please raise your hand or write a question. Oh, I think I just saw. I just saw some questions that I didn't realize that I was supposed to go where I was supposed to go to see the questions. So just give me a second. I will see. What happened when the public blockchain where hashes are stored crashes? All right, so far we haven't seen, we haven't seen that happening. And I have to mention I'm not a tech expert on blockchain, so I don't know if it's 100% foolproof. But in general, what we see is that the smart contract is usually stored separately from the data, and a lot of companies storing data separate, off the blockchain. So then, that's so that the data is basically is not affected by that. And in terms of what happens to the smart contract, if that happens, well, I believe they have a way to restore. Most blockchains out there, like major blockchains, have a way to deal with this. But I don't see necessarily the threat if you're using a blockchain like Ethereum, and not a smaller player in this market. And I will try to come up with a more intelligent answer to this, and then share with you guys later. What else? So all the individuals' assets would be on a central exchange from where it can be hassle-free traded between anybody. Right, so I don't know if all of the individuals' assets would be on an exchange. I don't know if this model works for every asset. So for real estate, it definitely works because real estate is the whole value in real estate is exchanging hands. So art is also similar in commodities and so on. So you could definitely put these things on exchange and can be traded. Now, whether it can be traded freely, that's a great question. So in most countries, security regulations are very, very complex. And in most countries, securities can only be traded or acquired, at least on the primary stage, by accredited investors or sophisticated investors. So who are these sophisticated or accredited investors? Well, these are individuals that make a certain amount of income, and these are individuals that know to calculate risk of certain investments. So most countries are limiting securities to just these investors. But on the secondary market, once the asset has gone public, on the next stage, a lot of the countries are allowing trading. However, they're allowing trading on just specific platforms that have very, very tough licenses to get, right? So these are exchanges, or in the US, they're called ATS, automatic trading system, all right? So I see a question here. Do law firms benefit from blockchain? And the answer is yes. So legal industry has gone great lengths to actually ensure, to use blockchain technology in things like smart contracts. So let's revisit the concept of the smart contract. So initially I said that this is basically a way to facilitate transactions, right? So I'm sending you money and I'm doing this via a smart contract, which ensures that my balance is reduced, your balance is increased. Now, if I'm sending you a blockchain token, then you are then you are receiving also rights to profits and revenues, right? So this is a smart contract, meaning that it incorporates a lot of information. So next year, let's say when I sell the property, then you're entitled to the profit. Now, law firms obviously deal a lot with contracts, right? So there are many simple contracts in the law practice. There are many simple contracts in the law practice, and they they can be automated with a smart contract, right? And there are many. There's a lot of accounting and payments and tracking in the legal system and regulation, of course, right? So law firms can use regulation technology that's based on blockchain as well. So there are many applications in the legal industry as well. So next question, can we use this technology in building CMDB? What is CMDB? Google CMDB, a configuration management database. All right, so, okay, I understand. I don't see why not. I think that anything that has to deal with data, especially governing relationship between different assets, will definitely benefit greatly from blockchain. And if blockchain hasn't been used yet for CMDB, this could be a great startup idea. So do you guys have any more questions? I see somebody's raising their hand. Just a minute. Okay. I think you guys wanted to maybe to talk, right? So that's when you raise a hand. Let me unmute you. Anuba, you're unmuted now, and you can ask a question. All right. So meanwhile, I'm gonna keep answering questions. All right. So hi all. Blockchain life sciences. You know what? I should have probably addressed this industry because it does have a lot of applications now for blockchain. So number one application that I've seen is the pharma industry players communicating with each other, right? So in the pharma industry, when you're running to make a drug, you know, there are a lot of discoveries that just get swept under the rug in the process, which is not relevant. Now, if you could share this information with other companies without hurting your own competitive edge, this could be a great moneymaker for everybody and a great way to advance this industry. So I've seen several applications that create kind of like data marketplace for pharma. Now, the easiest application that I actually mentioned earlier was the tracking of drugs like provenance and especially narcotics, you know, so legal narcotics that are used for, whatever mood disorders or pain disorders, right? Okay, mood disorders or pain disorders. So you could use blockchain for that, and you could of course use blockchain for management of receipts and patient management and so on, and payments. Blockchain has been used a lot in the medical system, right? So patient ID is one of the biggest issues because but for any reason, for payments or just for taking your medical data from one doctor in the system to another doctor or hospital and so on. So blockchain has already been tested in many of the applications where it was so easy for an individual to transfer their medical data from one place to the other. In terms of life sciences and research, there have been many applications, like I said, for sharing research. Okay. I see Shiv Prakash raised his hand, and I'm unmuting you. Hi. You wanted to ask a question? All right, write your question in the question database. Okay, so next question is, how do banks make money through blockchain? Well, right now, banks are just using blockchain technology to make payments much more seamless, to make transactions, cross-border transactions much seamless. Right now, the IBAN system is grossly outdated. It's 30 years old, and it needs to get a major upgrade. So blockchain has been used for that. To do these, cross-bank, cross-border transfers. So they're making money basically by reducing costs. That's one way. Another way banks have been using blockchain is to facilitate loans as well. So in some countries, they're using blockchain to facilitate loans or to store information in a much more secure manner. So they're looking at it from the cost perspective, rather than the revenue perspective, which is more like service providers that are making blockchain-based applications. So that's okay. So that's basically how banks are making money. And by the way, the whole definition of a bank has completely changed, right? So before, when you thought of a bank, you thought of Bank of America, Bank of India, or whatever. But now, smaller institutions, financial institutions are fulfilling a lot of the functions of a bank, right? So if you're talking about loans, well, of course, you have, I don't know, probably hundreds of thousands of loan providers, out of which many now are starting to use blockchain. So that's one, and then you have payment or transaction facilitation. So you can send money from another application which fulfills the function of a bank, right? So what else? Does Indian Federal Bank accept blockchain technology? So the greatest question would be really, does it accept crypto? And I think that in general, the answer is no, and then crypto is more or less illegal in India, as far as I heard. But India Bank and blockchain, I'm pretty sure, like any other bank, they probably have adopted blockchain. So I actually see that there's an article from a day ago that says India's banking sector is increasingly adopting blockchain technology. And of course, the nearby China is calling on all blockchain solution providers to come to China and develop. So I'm pretty sure that India doesn't want to stay behind. So I'm pretty sure that they do use blockchain in a federal bank. And by the way, if they don't use it on a solution level, they'll probably use it on a pilot level. Is there any connection between data science and blockchain? Are they related to each other? Well, the connection is basically on the way. Think about blockchain as an enabler technology, as the internet, because the internet is not a standalone product anymore. It may have been in the initial stages, in a few years of, let's say, the consumer boom. You had companies that are working on, internet security, internet consumer products, applications, and so on, right? So data science obviously can benefit from the use of blockchain technology, just as it benefited enormously from the use of internet. So the functions are a little different. Internet obviously allows you to transfer information and to make information public, to store and to make applications. Now, blockchain again also enables you to make applications, but has a slightly different mechanisms that enable and facilitate much more efficient transactions than they would be with the absence of blockchain, right? So that's how I would think about this. When blockchains are used in banks, does each node contain entire bank customers' data? Well, that's a great question, and it depends really. Well, actually, no. The answer in general is no, because the nodes that are built, in a private blockchain situation, and most blockchains are, most banks are using private blockchains, and they're using usually Hyperledger or Corda. So in this case, you would have you will assign nodes to different companies, and you will assign the rights to these nodes. So that's basically how it's usually used. But if and so in this case, whether each node contains any data, I don't know at all if a node would necessarily contain the data, because the data could be stored off the blockchain. And in case it is stored on the blockchain, then a lot of the times, the newest and the most buzz type technology that's used for storing sensitive data is things like MPC, multi-party computation, where you don't store data in a one centralized place. You usually store it in a decentralized manner, with or without the apps and the presence of blockchain. So I don't think that any data would be stored specifically in one place by one node. And I know that in blockchain is in general embodies an ecosystem where data is replicated or repeated from node to node, and the data is usually the transaction data, right? The data that needs to be verified. So even in that sense, for the data that needs to be verified, doesn't necessarily needs to be stored by all the nodes, just the nodes that are given the permission to do so. So blockchain is a fantastic mechanism for giving permissions, right? So that's why I have permission blockchain. So you have a great way to manage who is privy to whichever information, who is, which nodes are can make governance decisions and so on. So permission blockchains are actually a great tool that everybody should really look into. All right, so any research on blockchain which can be used by industry? Well, there's a lot of research done, and I personally know a lot of researchers working on different fields. However, it really, I don't think it's condensed to like one specific place. So you would do this, you would probably need to look, Google or Google Scholar or whatever on blockchain, and just type in the industry that you're interested in. Yeah. So does blockchain have application in military? Well, first of all, I've seen personally quite a few applications, and number one is security, right? So apparently the warfare now has shifted greatly from ground to the internet and digital warfare. So blockchain has definitely been used for security and for transferring information. You can transfer information as you would in the dark web, and when you're dealing with terrorists, you have to be very creative. So I know that blockchain has definitely been used for that. I know that blockchain has been used to identify terrorist activity and to identify patterns. And of course, anything that has to do with transactions, procurement, accounting. So Israeli military, definitely, I've seen a lot of blockchain applications just in our units, that our technology units are really working on this. I'm sure that the other militaries have done so as well, but this could be a really interesting research. So I haven't really looked into this industry very deeply. So I think that we are more or less coming to an end, guys. Just maybe take one more question and wrap up. I thank you guys for this opportunity to to talk to you about blockchain, to talk about my experience with blockchain. And I think this year the most interesting directions of blockchain will be, or the most fast developing technology directions would be tokenization, as I mentioned, would be consumer payment applications, loans, and finance. I think the finance is really going to lead because people are starting to move away from the centralized finance. So I personally really like the field that's called DeFi, decentralized finance, and I invite you guys to all look into DeFi, decentralized finance. And whatever you guys are doing with your career, you can always think about it, whether blockchain could enhance or your business. And I'm always open to open to questions. You can reach me at yael@solidblog.co. I see one more question here: how blockchain can help in governance. Well, there's actually many applications in governance, from voting, kind of decentralized digital voting, to decision making. There are some blockchain applications that help dispute resolution and create some protocol for how companies or individuals handle disputes. And I've seen a year or two ago, there were several tokens that are kind of helping communities to function and to make decisions together, right? So there was one interesting application in which the community would vote for judges or for individuals who would facilitate the dispute resolution. Why do we need blockchain for all of this and not just use normal regular applications? One of the reasons, because of the consensus mechanism that happens without somebody pushing the button really to choose these or to select these processes. And the other reason is, of course, the immutability of all the records. Yeah. Can blockchain replace the current voting system? Well, that's a great question. Probably not today. And although I promise you, the majority of the governments have looked into it, but I think most it's not researched enough, blockchain, and it's not understood enough to replace very, very important processes of governance. But I know that there are a few countries or jurisdictions where some of the voting has been done with blockchain, maybe municipal or on a town level. So I think in the future we're going to see more of that. Yeah. Where was it used? I think there was a city in the U.S., but I might be wrong. Maybe there is a few states in the U.S. like Vermont that are very friendly towards blockchain. So I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly which cities. And but I can look it up, and if you want to email me, I can send you some more info. All right, guys, thank you so much. Feel free to contact me at any time, and I'll see you at next webinars.
Thanks a lot, Ms. Yael. It was nice having you on the panel. It was like, I think I'm very much sure the audience loved it. It was a very insightful session for everyone. Stay glued, everyone. I think we have got one platform for webinar. So it covers all the latest webinar series on the latest technologies like blockchain, DevOps is there, AWS, Azure, then ITSM solutions are there. So you can visit our website for this. It's novelvista.com and /webinar. Over there you can find the technologies of your interest, and you can accordingly register for our upcoming webinars. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time. It was nice having you over here. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Take care.